Good day, everyone. It's me, Mr. Bates, with a whole cornucopia of special guests this week. With regards to teachers, we have myself, Mr. Josh, and Miss Hilton, and we have a large number of students. And today we're going to be talking about something that is a hot topic and has been for a long time and will be for a long time to come, I think, and that will be feminism. Okay, so Thomas, before we came on, had a suggestion that the people assembled will raise their hands if they consider themselves to be a feminist.
Okay.
And the majority of us consider ourselves to be feminists. You have your hand up. Why did you do that, Kiara? Why do you consider yourself to be a feminist?
Because I believe it's like the right thing to do.
The right thing
to
do.
believe in.
Yeah?
Why?
Because it's basically the equal rights of the sexes. And I think everyone should be equal in rights and opportunities.
Great, so equal in rights and opportunities. Let's hear from a guy. Javi, why did you raise your hand?
I mean, I think the same way, like, you shouldn't have better opportunities or a better life just because you were born a man or you were born a woman. Like, everyone should be equal.
Yeah, cool. Miss Hilton, you raised your hand as well, so let's hear from someone, not a student.
Well, I'm a feminist because I think it's an ongoing struggle for women to be in control of every sphere of their lives, whether it's their bodies, their careers, their relationships, even the way they're named. I present myself here as Miss Hilton. I wasn't born that way. I had another name when I was born, and then I was adopted and I had another name. I refused those names when in 1995, and I changed my name to Hilton. I named myself as a feminist act, that I would be named by myself and not be named by any man in my life.
Nice. So from the trenches, guys. Speaking for myself, I'm a feminist because I feel that it's not logical for me to consider anyone to be unequal from anyone else, given that we all formed from the same carbon and stuff. So we're just a random assortment of atoms, so why anyone would consider themselves different based on arbitrary ideas is beyond me. So that kind of leads to our first question. Should all women be feminists?
I think a lot of women who would dislike the term feminist or the ideology are sort of feminists, even though they reject the term because they associate it with the extremism. I have relatives who believe fully in women's rights and women being equal to men in rights and duties, but they hate the term feminist. They think it's reserved for extremists.
Yeah, okay, so you immediately hit on something else there, is that a lot of people reject the term feminism for a number of different reasons. Does anyone hazard a guess at what those reasons might be? Why people rebel against the term feminism, Max?
Maybe the idea that an act of common sense and like rationalist mindset, such as equal rights, should not be tied to a sort of group.
I think that's a very intelligent answer. I don't know if that's actually necessarily the case. Yeah.
Feminism is a movement that goes against the inequality that has been directed towards women. So we understand that we're fighting for equal rights, but feminism is called that way because it is especially towards those kind of rights. I don't know if you...
Yeah.
Yeah?
So why are people going to resist that word then?
Because of the bad ideas that have been generated around it.
Yeah, cultural baggage is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think feminism has become a very loaded term. Vicente, you had your hand up?
Yes, that I think that as long as that the fact that feminism is called feminism is kind of ironic. You're putting the name of a gender in the gender equal movement, and answering many hands up, and answering the question you made before, should all women be feminist? I think yes, but that's because I feel almost everybody should be a feminist.
Okay, Miss Hilton, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I think it's probably important to, there's two things that come to mind with me, is addressing things like a term like machista. I've recently become aware of the use of that term in its fullness, and the idea of women supporting a system that allows certain cultural practices to go on in society, so not challenging, because it keeps the status quo going. So for some, there is a resistance to the idea that as women you should challenge the status quo, and in turn they then support the system of machista, it seems to me. But also there's a second thing that occurs to me, and that is that people might feel the battle is won. It's a given that we should have laws that say that men and women are equal.
Yeah.
But
You guys have the vote. We're done.
yeah, exactly, it's done. But it reminds me, I want to bring in a new phrase, male privilege. We talk about white privilege, and I think that's a huge issue in black civil rights that still is a struggle around the world. And I think the same is true with feminism. I think there is a certain degree of male privilege, albeit it's good to see my brothers around the table in support of feminism. But I do think it's a woman's issue, and to some extent, like Jesus had people sitting at his feet and listening, I'd like men to do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, sit at the feet and listen to what the women have to say.
Amen.
In the first place.
Vale?
Thank you.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Josh, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I feel like half the problem here is that it almost feels like a battle. It feels like the way that we move, it almost feels like lots of people assume that pushing women's rights forward is taking men's rights away. That it's an us or a them. And often when you have this conversation, people frame it in, you say, oh, women don't have the same privilege as men, for example, in their career. Women often get paid less than men. And men almost approach it like, oh no, we have to give something up to allow women to have equal rights.
Yeah.
But that's not the purpose, right? That's not the point. It's the opposite of the point, in fact.
I think the best example of that is recently in Las Condes, I don't know if you all know, but there has recently been a law change outlawing catcalling. I don't know the term. Yeah, I can't remember it.
Piropos.
Piropos. Yeah, it's made illegal, and I've heard anecdotally from friends, whatever, that people have complained, men have complained that it's a reduction of their liberty. And this is crazy, right?
It's
Because
taking
they're
their
only
freedom
complaining because now they're affected by the problem, right? They couldn't understand there was a problem with catcalling because they weren't the victims of that problem. Now, one of the problems with getting males on board with feminism is that we can never truly understand the problem. We don't get catcalled every day. We don't suffer the same issues. And there is a big gulf of understanding, which is why stuff like this is so, so important. Kiara?
I also think some people reject feminism because, for men it's mostly comfortable having the power and all that, but it's also an issue for men, like being everything that's associated with being a woman, like crying or earrings or long hair or nails or makeup, like men are banned from all that when they could have that too. Like there are a lot of men who want to have long hair, who like to have earrings or do makeup, but because of the sexist world we're living in, they can't have that because that's associated with men.
Yeah.
And also
So there's the kind of idea of toxic masculinity
yeah.
that makes just the fact that people have a problem with that, men being feminists or feminine, just widens the gulf, the difference between them. Tom?
I have a couple of things to say. I know we're meant to give the women more
No, Tom, it's about
voice,
equal rights.
so-
Equal
rights.
rights.
All right?
So basically, regarding this whole thing of the male perspective and feminism, I as a man, I hear like now that there's the general outcry of women who have suffered from little abuses to huge abuses from men throughout their whole lives, and I feel ashamed of being a man hearing people of my own gender have literally generalized a whole group of people and caused them harm.
But you're not guilty.
I'm not guilty.
When you just
So why do you feel
generalize-
ashamed?
Why emotions are irrational.
Vale?
I want to go back a bit to the subject of catcalling.
Yeah.
And we already live in a patriarchal society, so putting the term feminism on the table is basically like, these are men's rights, they're up here, we're taking women up there too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard for men to understand what we go through. They're not really seeing what's happening in our lives and how it affects us,
No.
because they're not living, and because we're not living it. We understand that, we see that, but we also want them to acknowledge that our lives are different and our experiences and how we live life is different, and to respect that. Because I think the main problem is when men just like shut you up because they think it's wrong and they haven't even lived the situation you were in.
With mansplaining things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really add anything to that, personally. Max, you have your hand up?
Yeah, that personally, I I think that I don't know your name, but what you said of being ashamed of being a man is many times what alienates many men or even women from this movement, because this shame culture of saying doesn't matter who you are personally, but because of being a man, you're immediately more guilty even if you haven't done anything. I understand that effectively men have been like oppressing women for the longest time, but this approach of vengeance over justice is many times what alienates many people.
The thing is, such a feeling for me, it makes me want to prove wrong the man who actually do horrible things, the woman.
Does it?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you said, particularly because in this room it's kind of synonymous with the fact that there may well be many men now in society that are willing to stand alongside women in a feminist cause, and that's a great thing. However, there are 10 men here and there are 4 women, and that also is symbolic of what's going on in the world. You see, the lawmakers are mostly men. You know, the people in charge are mostly men, and the culture, as you said, is patriarchal and sexist still. So I really appreciate what you said, even though you may not have any personal guilt yourself, but to acknowledge the fact that women are underrepresented in actually the decision-making spheres of life. We have laws being made where women aren't involved in those law processes, taking control of their body. There's lots of things out there, whether it's abortion, whether it's to do with sanitary protection and the cost of it and the taxation of it. The decisions that are being made over women's bodies are mostly being made by men. So all power to men that actually recognise that they infiltrate that system, and we need to encourage more women to have the opportunity to speak.
I think it's one thing for men to acknowledge that that's what's going on. I think it's a much bigger step for men to give up some of their power in order to give women more power.
Yes.
I can say, I get paid more than you, but I'm not going to take a pay cut so that you get more money. Very, very few people are willing to do that, and that's probably something that needs to happen eventually. Vale?
I do understand as if, for example, as a guy, you don't abuse people and these terrible things they say men do, but you also grew up in a society where that is acknowledged as normal, and there's something imposed in masculinity and how men grow up that is already sexist. So you don't necessarily have the fault of. I'm talking towards what Thomas said. You don't necessarily have the fault. And that sense of guilt is not completely yours, but there are some aspects that are present in your life and you're not necessarily conscious of them.
Or challenging.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Jose Pablo?
I get what Valentina said. We should acknowledge that being a woman sometimes is bad, but I also say that being a man isn't. It also sucks. I mean, you cannot, you cannot show your emotions. You must provide, even though you're wasted. You must do this. You must do this. And,
Yeah, kind of what I
and
said.
it's yes, if we want feminism, we need to let's take these gender roles that we say. Also, regarding the things that we that they said about men being making laws and everything, I think that women have had the right to vote for decades now. And if they want a woman to make the laws, why don't they vote for a woman? I know that we should promote women.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
If
If people want women to make the laws, why don't people vote for women? Izzy, do you have anything to say?
That, talking about what you said, the man has to to provide it at home, be the one who brings the money to the household. If women had equal pay as men, if we had equal pay, and then obviously it would be easier to decide between a guy who wins more than you and somebody has to stay at home and raise the kids. You decide the guy that wins more money than you. But if the women want more money than the guy, well, probably the guy would stay at home and raise the kids. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had equal pay, then that dilemma would be different.
Yeah. Josh?
I while I understand both of you, I feel like both those are a little short-sighted. Feminism for me is not an issue about individuals treating individual people individually. It's not about I, a man, treating women politely. That's not what feminism is. Feminism is systemic. It's about the structure. It's about government. It's about schooling. your point, why don't women vote for women, is really, really good. Why don't women vote for women was a very, very simple answer. There aren't women to vote for. It's no more than that. Women do not have a history of receiving the same education as men. Therefore, they don't go to the same quality universities as men. They don't get the same quality jobs as men. They're not as educated as men. They don't have the same powerful connections with other powerful men. They don't know how to play the game in the way that men play the game, because politics is a boys' club. It always has been. Every time you read newspaper articles about, you hear a reporter has recorded some politician discussing visiting whores with his politician friends and snorting cocaine off these women's backs and treating them disposably. It's not just so easy that, women can just be a politician. The gate is closed.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be a tenuous point, but it's one that I'm keen to discuss and one that does have a link to what Mr. Josh is saying. One of the things I hear constantly in class and in school is the idea that I kind of agree with feminist aims for equality, however I disagree with the methods which they use to do it. And this gives rise to one of my least favourite words of all time, feminazism, and the idea that feminists are militant. My question is, I think that this is a generalisation. People take one faction of the feminist movement and extrapolate it to consider the whole. But my point is, when you're talking about there's a closed door and we don't have any female politicians, we have a wage gap, etc., and these things seem almost impossible to overthrow, are these extreme acts necessary in order for us to be able to have the discussion and do something about it? Vale?
I feel like they are. If you look at feminism throughout history, in the years before, it's just like it's now. Women took off their bras and shouted and started throwing stones, and it was very radical and very strong. It's just we ignore that and we see we got to vote. Also, there's a perception about women that they're delicate and soft, and I think that has a bit to do with the idea we have about those feminist acts. If you look at any protest or anything that is kind of like that, they're all really violent.
Yeah.
The protests made by feminists are not that different from most protests, but they're more called out. They show more the gender word.
I don't actually think the feminist movement is particularly violent. I think this is a myth, honestly.
Yeah.
I think there are very few examples of women attacking people.
Yeah,
really.
they say that women that are with their shirts off and showing their boobs are being really violent when they're not hitting anybody. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Do you think that feminazism is another form of abuse? It's just
Absolutely.
another way to try and control women.
Yeah.
So we'll call them names. It's name calling. And I think if you are going to overturn a world system, then it is going to have to be really radical.
Yeah.
I'd like to mention the idea of education in that process. I mean, we're in a school, we could give politics classes to women, we could give child rearing classes to men, because I really do think it starts in the home. I think the personal sphere for feminists is very political. And again, I would mention machista culture, which women support. When if mothers, they think that they have to raise their boys to be boys and raise their girls to be girls. And the way that they treat their boys and girls differently, even to the extent that their boys get more to eat, girls do more of the housework, girls do the cleaning and the bathroom, they have different chores to the boys. And I just think that they may not realise they're supporting a system that actually denigrates and doesn't help women. And so I think a lot of education needs to be done, and I think it does need to be radical.
Cool. Vicente?
My question is that if almost all of us, for not saying everyone, considers themselves a feminist and agrees in equal rights for women and men, and the women have the vote and we're supposed to be equal, what is the movement fighting for?
Not everyone believes what you just said. Absolutely.
But in the laws, I think it is pretty equal.
Anyone? Kiara?
I mean, yeah, in the laws, when it states, it is equal, but in the day-to-day, when you go to work, when you go to school, when you're with your friends, it's not equal. They're fighting more, not for the rights, because, yeah, the rights are there, they're written down, but it doesn't mean that people are acting upon them.
I had a dream the other day. I'm going to tell you about it, okay? I didn't
do the
Come on, Martin.
A couple months ago, I'll tell you about it because it really made me feel weird. I've been thinking about it for a while. And in my dream, I was a woman, okay? And I was talking to this guy. I was at university. We were doing some project together, and I was having a conversation with the guy, and he was asking me for help. And I realized halfway through the conversation, he didn't want my help, and he wasn't listening to me. He was just trying to hook up with me, okay? And I know this is really unusual, but he wasn't interested in what I had to say. He was only trying to engage me in a conversation. And I see it happen with my dog. You're gonna laugh at me, but I see it happen with my dog, my female dog. She runs around in the park, and the male dogs come over to her, and they sniff her, and then they play with her. You wanna play? You wanna play? And she's like, yeah, I wanna play. And then they run around, they jump, and they hump her, okay? Now, I think this is a very male thing, and whether you realize it or not. I get the impression that men, or something that women have to deal with, that men don't have to deal with, is constant sexualization. Constant. For every woman, there is a man who is watching her and thinking, I would. Okay? I guarantee you that. And women have to deal with this constant sexualization all the time. And, you know, you guys are teenagers. That freaks me out. That really, really freaks me out. By older men as well. And, you know, come back to Mr. Bass's point about catcalling and stuff. You may consider it silly. But what would happen if every time you walked down the road, a bunch of middle-aged women started screaming at you like, hey, way on, like, bring that fine ass over here? Would you be like, you know, or would you be like, that's actually really gross?
I was actually catcalled once.
Thomas. Sorry, Tom, were you dressed appropriately? Were you wearing too few clothing? Was your shirt too short?
asking for it.
Well, you were asking for it, right?
Of course I was. I was walking down the street and some guys that seemed to be like in the university, they were in a car and they shouted like, oh, hot stuff or some sort of thing like that.
For you, that's normal. It's almost like
And
a novelty.
I was like,
once.
who would do that? What's the problem with that person? And then I noticed, right in front of me, walking in my direction, two 12-year-old girls.
Gross.
I noticed they were screaming at the girls.
Gross.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
12 years old.
Yeah, they didn't even look like older girls, and these guys looked like they were going like to university.
Yeah, it's gross.
You see?
Like it happens. I think we have to change. It has to change the mentality of the whole country, of the whole society. Because imagine, I was with my mom going to vote for the presidential election, and I was with my mother. And you can see the difference in age. And we were walking past these guys that were like 60, 50 years old. And they look at my mother, they look at me, and with like, they didn't even think about it twice. They started screaming at me things like, Rica, and stuff. And my mother was there like, okay. Like, obviously she was like shocked and scared because we were like in an alley. But then we looked at each other and said like, what is going on? Like, this has to change. Like, I couldn't believe that in front of my mother that could like happen. Like, it was no boundary.
Absolutely.
Lack of respect.
We have
Sorry.
Oh,
Good.
yeah, I'm sorry. Once I saw a joke that spoke about a girl that walked into a gym and got her headphones on and started working out, and then 2 men said like, she's really asking for it. And
Is that a joke?
Yeah, well written and stuff, but that was like the basic idea. Like she just walked in, started doing her exercises, and they were like, yeah, she's asking for it.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, like she's yelling
Just you can
for
do it. It doesn't matter what she's
attention.
doing. She's just asking for it, no matter
Like
what.
you breathe and you're
Yeah.
seen as an object just because you're.
A woman
it's
breathes
like,
and their chest rises. Yeah? A woman sweats and, you know...
She jogs and it's like, oh my god.
Right.
Kiara?
It's like a girl gets her period and her boobs, and suddenly she's just like a whole
New world.
object.
Ironically,
In the words of
It
Aladdin.
was like,
a whole new world.
I was going to say a hole to penetrate, but okay.
No, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
a gross Scottish phrase
Yeah.
is get your hole to mean have sex with a woman.
Yeah.
Isn't that disgusting? Disgusting.
You got the Scott.
It's disgusting.
We're a
The
hole.
only time
Get your hole.
most
women
men
are
are not
Disgusting.
willing to have sex with a woman is when that woman's on her period.
What? What just happened?
That was a bit of a jump, and that's also not.
Sorry.
I think I missed the first part of that sentence.
It's
Hold
a
on.
generalization fallacy, but regarding this whole idea, the only time a man won't sexualize a woman is when she's on her period.
Because
Wait,
it's
won't.
disgusting.
I thought you said wants sex with.
That's-
Okay, we have 5 minutes left. Just to summarise, we've talked about how clearly and deeply entrenched these problems are, and how when people try to do something about these things, they get labeled as extremist or a feminazi, which makes the problem worse. And these problems are difficult to deal with. However, what we want to finish on is, what do you think you can and will do in order to make this problem better? Isadora, you got your hand up?
I think it starts like with your family, like starting posing that things to your family. I have like the luck that my family wants me to be like a successful woman and has never treated me like unequally with my brother. But I think I have to transmit that to my son and my daughter. That's
Maybe a little more, like, I think your family's a good idea, but honestly, if your mum was sitting there letting you get screamed at in the street and she was going, oh no, I might make the argument that your mum needs to turn around and... there is a point, you know?
Yeah.
Javier, what are you going to do? What can you do?
I think the first thing you need to do is like make a change in yourself, like in what you want to do, because everyone can be like, oh, I'm a feminist.
What are you going to do?
That's the thing. If you do nothing, you.
I'm asking you, what are you going to do?
Like if you see something wrong, you will do something. We talked about how the system is like wrong, so we can try to change that, because we are like the future generation of Chile, and we have the privilege to make some change. So when we grow up, we like need to do that. We need to make a change.
I love that. I love that phrase, privilege to make a change. Jose Pablo?
I think that generations are getting openly more liberal nowadays. For example, the thing that Izzy said, they didn't treat me unfairly with my brother. I think that's something that happened probably 60, 80 years ago.
So what can you do today?
Nowadays, I think just if we keep on promoting feminism.
You is right. I want to. This question is specific. What will you, as a human being, Jose Pablo, do?
Me, I would like treat everybody equally, but I'm not talking about that right now.
We are.
It's the question.
It's like I think generations are just going to keep getting more and more liberal and things like.
It's too passive.
Miss Julianne?
It's too passive.
Yeah, I think the question actually makes you think about, you know, the very things that you don't want to turn on their heads in your own personal life. That this is the thing with being a feminist, and perhaps harder if you're a man, because would you be prepared to stay at home and raise the children because your wife's career is actually something that, you know, makes her the person that she is, and she blossoms and she can earn the money and do that? Would you be prepared to turn things on their head? You see, the thing about being a feminist, it can really affect your relationships. There are certain men women should not go out with or marry. There are certain women, you know, that maybe support structures that you might think, well, no, I don't want to bring my children up in that old-fashioned environment. And so it's all about education for me, but that can be really personal, and it can involve you confronting things that perhaps your family, your parents and your grandparents will take for granted about you. And, you know, so maybe it's those surprising decisions for yourself on a daily basis. Really.
Let's go here from Max, Chiara and Vale before we go.
Personally, I think that many of us, although it is a very important issue the issue of equality, many of us have many things to do, and feminism or taking a more active role, for example, in marches and things, isn't something we have time for. So many times, something as simple as giving an example or acting in a slightly different way in the street can give an example to even one person, not helping somebody, not catcalling, for example, helping. Little acts like that are some things that actually make a change. Not
small acts done by a large number of people over a long time and make a big difference.
The protests go on the cover of like the history books, but the true change comes from like the street interactions.
It's a nice sentiment. Chiara?
I think it starts with most of all yourself, like realizing the small things, small changes you can do. Also explain to people, because most people really don't understand what really feminism is. And I really think that starts with these really small things that you can change day to day. Like, for example, why does my boyfriend have to open the car door for me? Like, I can perfectly open it for him. It's like little things that are easier to start with.
Vale?
I'm sorry for the word I'm gonna use, but I just don't take bullshit. I call out, yeah, exactly. I call out sexist, like, ideas.
Behavior,
I just call them out and tell them I'm trying to make them understand. And as men, if you don't really know what to do to be a feminist and really live feminism, just listen to women.
Yeah.
Listen to what they have to say.
Just ask.
And you'll get to understand and stop the term of feminazism, because it just diminishes everything that is feminism with like no good base.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I had a good line to finish on, but Valley actually did it for me. Just listen to women, listen to our podcast, and try and do something about it. Ciao.
Cool. Thanks a lot, everyone.